Welcome. It's This Is Going Well, I think, with David Cooper. I am David Cooper. It's This Is Going Well, I think, the show where no one's listening, no one cares. The show where every episode's the last episode. We got a great lineup, and I'm going to jump right into it. But let me tell you what's coming up first. In about 20 minutes' time, we'll be joined by foreign correspondent Tony Five for something a little serious. Tony's going to cover a recent tragedy in Southport, England, that has the United Kingdom at a complete loss for words. 3 children are dead after a stabbing at a Taylor Swift-themed event. Tony and I are going to cover that seriously. And then we'll get a little more lighthearted as Tony brings the show a new segment. It's called TRTTTA. Tony's Random Things to Talk About. After that, it's therapist Gary Dierenfeld for Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. And Gary's going to give us the therapist's perspective on bad-mouthing. You know, when parents are separated and they bad-mouth the other one to the kid. After that, an expert on the cartoon The Simpsons on the topic of all those times, and there were many, The Simpsons predicted the future. For example, Trump getting elected? That's going to be hilarious. And finally, we'll have a representative from a dog and cat television talent agency. That's going to be surreal. It's going to be a great show. I know you're going to love it, but first, this. Carmi Levy is here, technology expert from London, Ontario, Canada, in a little segment we call It's Time for Technology Time Technology. Carmi, welcome to the show, my friend.
Great to be with you, David. Thanks for having me back.
Carmi, the proverbial question, is that a motor in my pants or am I just happy to see you? Is that a exoskeleton in my pants or am I just happy to see you? Is that assisted powered pants in my pants? The truth is I'm just happy to see you.
I'm happy to see you too. I don't have motors in my pants, but that doesn't mean other people won't have them. There's a company called Skip, which we've probably never heard of. They originated in Google's X Labs. That's sort of their moonshot division where they try all sorts of crazy things, most of which never see the light of day. But sometimes the things that they create go on to be, really famous and really successful. Like Gmail. Gmail started there. And some of the earliest workings of ChatGPT when they were still partnered with OpenAI, in fact, originated there. So they do some really cool fundamental research. So they partnered with a company called Arc'teryx. They do high-end outdoor clothing and equipment. And they've come up with something called the Mogo Paint. And Mogo stands for mountain goat. Basically what it is, it looks like a pair of sort of bulky pants, and it has motors and actuators in it, like servo motors that can give you a boost in power, and they can help your legs, say, walk up a hill when your muscles are feeling iffy. And so it's almost like an exoskeleton, but really designed to be incorporated into clothes that you would wear every day. Which sounds really cool, and it is. It has some really cool applications. So, for example, they showed a video of a woman who hasn't been able to climb stairs in 25 years. She was able to wear these pants to do just that. Or an older gentleman who has been hiking in the mountains near his house all his life, but as he ages, it's getting harder. It allows him to still stay out there. So it's really more of a mobility device than a medical device, but it really does have a lot of really cool benefits. And they are looking at certifying it for use in medical situations. So, for example, for Parkinson's patients, it could have huge benefits for individuals with mobility limitations. This is, a pretty cool advancement and something that certainly someone with mobility issues might want to keep an eye on.
So on the one hand, this seems like a modern, cooler, more high-tech version of, the stereo elevator that you would see old rich people install in their homes on television. I never actually saw one in person, but they're very slow and they're fun. And there's that episode of Seinfeld where George rides one. So yes, medical uses, people with limited mobility, also kind of recreational use, right? Like imagine I want to climb Everest, but I don't want to train, just the legs can do it for me.
It lets you do things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. And I think it's awesome. And yeah, if it means that I don't have to install an Acorn stair lift in my house when I'm 85 years old, I am down for this because they look pretty cool too.
There's also the kind of like boring dystopia side to this, which is like, I imagine a dystopian future where military exoskeleton robot human hybrids are just running around with guns like in Terminator. And I feel like this is the first step towards weaponed exoskeleton. What are these movies where they climb into a suit?
Yeah, well, the U.S. Army is already working on things like this because they do feel that exoskeletons hold huge promise to help soldiers move faster, be better protected, be safer on the battlefield. And of course, from that point, it's kind of a hop, skip, and a jump from using exoskeletons to help human soldiers survive the battlefield to maybe using exoskeletons or some kind of robotics to replace human soldiers so that no one has to die in the event of war. So maybe this will result in a more peaceful world, or maybe it'll result in one that's a little bit more violent. Who knows? But military, in this particular instance, these Mogo pants are not military at all.
No.
There's no military involvement. But we do know that that armies and other military organizations around the world, particularly in the U.S., are looking at technologies like this to revolutionize how they bring soldiers to the battlefield.
It just seems like a first step. Like if Google really nails it down, then it goes to arms, then it goes to full body, and then you end up, what was that TV show, Fallout?
Yeah, or like RoboCop, right? Or it's kind of like this like human technology mixture hybrid cyborg, and almost like a superhuman capability with a human at the core of it. It sounds really compelling. It sounds really cool, but like every technology, it can be used to help people lead better lives. It can also be used to kill them. Take your pick.
Look, I'm a big fan of RoboCop. So
I actually, Peter Weller.
Peter Weller, yeah, he died. Is he? No, he's alive. He died never. He died sometime in the future, I assume, unless he lives forever because he's RoboCop. We can't be sure.
Let's not kill him like we did Gordon Lightfoot prematurely.
Oh, Gordy, yeah.
Rest his soul.
Also, oddly mentioned in a Seinfeld episode, which I was like, and Miranda was like, he's Canadian? I'm like, yes, he's Canadian. Miranda, my girlfriend, of course. Okay. Whatever. I'm actually a fan of these. If they can help people with limited mobility or people as they age climb stairs, amazing. I don't necessarily think it's like, okay, assisted legs, and then boom, we're all dying from robots. I'm just playing the devil's advocate here. Here's a story where I don't necessarily have to play the devil's advocate. I've long been told and anecdotally heard stories from people I know. U.S. border agents, when you enter the United States, have like infinite power. Even if you are American or a permanent resident and they can't like deport you, they can just detain you forever, Yeah. And they have sweeping laws on what they can do when you enter the country. They can basically suspend your civil liberties in a way that the police can't. And there's like this weird law where the border's not actually the border. It's like 500 miles from a border, which covers like all of the U.S. population. So U.S. border guards, U.S. border agents have like infinite rights to search you wherever they are. I've driven through checkpoints in Southern California that are like 100 miles from the border, and they say, give me your documents. And I just so happen to have my passport on me. I didn't think I needed it, Forget about that. Long heard that U.S. border agents have sweeping rights to detain Americans, but especially foreign nationals, and especially immigrants, especially tourists. One thing I've heard, and again, it's never happened to me, but I've heard horror stories of it. They just go through your phone. They just like seize your phone, seize your laptop, go through it, and you can't do anything. It's not like they even need a warrant. Until now. And I'm so glad whoever challenged this did, because a federal court has ruled, hey, sure, you can search people's cell phones at the border. You need to do that to do your job. Maybe they're drug trafficking, whatever it is. But you got to at least have a warrant. You at least got to have a court to say you are allowed to do that. Because, I don't know, I just think limiting these people's power when people are at their most vulnerable, right? Just trying to like get in a country.
Yeah, well, this comes to us. So there was a case, and this is where this all started. So this U.S. citizen, his name was Kurbonali Sultanov, and a few years ago he was crossing. He was going through JFK in New York, and he was asked for his passport, and he gave it to them. He was asked for his phone, he gave it to them. They asked him for his password, he gave it to them. And wouldn't you know, they were just idly rifling through his phone, and they found material on it that was alleged to be child sexual abuse material. He was arrested, he was charged, and then he ultimately launched his own legal challenge. He appealed it, saying they violated his Fourth Amendment rights. There was no warrant. He ultimately lost the case. However, that case became the basis for this challenge that a federal district court in New York has just ruled on. They're saying that U.S. border agents must obtain a warrant before searching electronic devices of both Americans and international travelers who are crossing the U.S. border. So this is a landmark ruling, because up until now, it has been fuzzy. It has been questionable. And we've always told our kids whenever we cross the border to, recognize the fact that they are powerless when they cross a border, that border agents can essentially do anything. Personal rights really mean nothing in that space. And if they're concerned about anything on their phones, for example, if there's music there that they maybe didn't pay for, get rid of it. Get rid of any apps that they don't want anyone else to be snooping into, and they can always reinstall them on the other side of the border. And so this is a landmark case that will set a huge precedent for other jurisdictions. It only applies in New York for now. So if you're concerned about your rights crossing the border, you may want to cross at a New York-based border, not in any other state. However, going forward, we will see other court cases based on this because it essentially tells the U.S. border and Customs and Border Protection, you can't do whatever you want without a warrant. There has to be due process. There has to be a reasonable suspicion of something before you seek proper legal action to search someone's phone. You can't just grab it out of their hands, ask for a password, and go to town. I think that's an important line in the sand. This is a huge victory for anyone who's ever crossed a border and wondered what's going to happen to me if they grab a hold of my phone.
There's this conference in Las Vegas every year, and I'm sure you do know, but for those listening, they may not, called DEF CON. And it's I think it was held out of Las Vegas last year, but not important.
Yeah.
It's the security, the IT security conference. It's sort of the mecca if you're a hacker, even a good guy hacker who works for a corporation that does security and antivirus and all this. When people come from out of country who are security researchers and security engineers, they always wipe their phones, and they always talk about wiping their phones before they go because, the feds are really like looking at these, even though they're the people who try to protect people's computers, they're always looking at them. And the other thing I'll say is if you're looking to cross the border in New York, the border at Buffalo, the bridge, it's called the Rainbow Bridge. Now, in common American idioms, when pets die, when little Fufu the cat dies, Americans will say, well, he crossed the Rainbow Bridge now. And whenever I read that online up until last year, I'd be like, why are people driving their deceased pets across from Buffalo?
That's right. I've driven across that Rainbow Bridge, and no, I did not bring my pet with me.
It would certainly be an odd thing to do. I was today years old when I realized it was a different Rainbow Bridge. We're here with Carmi Levy. When we come back, we'll talk about video game voice actors who are going on strike over AI voice copies. We'll be back with Carmi on It's Time for Technology Time. Carmi Levy is here, technology expert on It's Time for Technology Time. Carmi, welcome back. Always a pleasure.
Good to be back. Thanks for the welcome. I appreciate it.
So, we are here. Mm-hmm. I swear we're here. We're not AI copies of ourselves.
Yeah, no, I'm touching my head. I can feel myself. It's me. I'm human.
It would be weird if we were AI copies of ourselves discussing how we're not and we're convincing people. Or are we convincing people? I don't know. Probably not the technology there yet is not a sentence that makes sense, but maybe the AI is trying to confuse you. Probably the technology isn't there yet to be as good as we're sounding now. But if it's not here yet, it's going to be here like tomorrow. We're at the precipice of I train an AI with a bunch of voice samples, and it can accurately and extremely well, again, not talking properly. It can accurately and do it extremely well. It can copy our voices using AI. Voice actors have something to worry about. Video game voice actors especially have something to worry about because it's not as high budget, right? Like that's just regular paid work. You get a regular salary. That's like real kind of meat and potatoes of voice work, video games. That segment of it, not the amazing voice actors that voice big Disney movies. That segment of it is really where I think we're first going to see AI deployed. Maybe in some cases for good, right? A video game that the map or the video game's journey gets AI generated, so it's not the same every time. That could be sort of a wholesome use of it. But a non-wholesome use of it is just ripping off voice actors' voices and not paying them. And so we got a strike going on, which is wild. I wonder what the outcome of this is going to be. Carmi, that's my long-winded description of what's happening. Do you want to walk me through this story?
Yeah. So, I mean, we all remember the SAG-AFTRA strikes last year, the writers, the actors, two separate strikes, who walked the picket line for months. And the sticking point there was the studio's use of artificial intelligence. And they were fighting, the union was fighting for protection for artists against encroaching use of AI to essentially replace them. And so now it's the video game voice actors' turn. And the issue is exactly the same. Studios in the gaming industry are pushing to use more AI in the development process. And like you described here, there are cases where it absolutely makes sense as an addition to the toolkit to make games better, more immersive, to make them, more cost effective to develop, so you can bring more games to market in a shorter amount of time. Who wouldn't want that? However, the fear is that the contracts that game developers want to sign with their talent would allow them to use AI to create character emotion. So instead of traditional motion capture, replace it with AI, or have a voice actor essentially do their work once, and then it would be fed into a large language model, and then they would use the AI going forward. They would lose their job. Also, sort of crowd scenes, where you have a voice actor, maybe or a regular actor doing like a bit part. Those are often entry points into the industry. You get a part like that, you put it on your resume. That's your stepping stone to bigger parts, bigger jobs, and building your brand. Well, if AI takes over that low end of the market, how does anyone get in and get their leg up in a market that's really difficult to break into? So the voice actors are continuing their, voice actors and motion capture actors. They are continuing the process that was begun last year by the writers and the actors. But the issue is exactly the same. And really the question then becomes, where does AI fit? Where are those lines about what is and is not acceptable for the workers who populate the industry? And at what point are we going to put our foot down saying, you can't obsolete an entire swath of creatives in a creative industry. There has to be better balance.
Interesting. I wonder, is the industry just going to be like, screw you voice actors, if you want to strike, we'll just fire you all? Like, do they really have the power to kind of take down this industry at this point?
I'm kind of hoping that that sanity will prevail. That what we saw with the writers and the actors last year was the studios came back to the table, recognized the concerns, and made sure that the updated contracts had terminology in there that protected the integrity of the human contribution to the process. So they didn't tell the actors and the writers to go six-letter the alphabet themselves, and they didn't just sort of say, we're going to pull an air traffic controller union thing and just fire you all and do it on our own and use technology. They were conciliatory, and I'm kind of hoping that we will have a similar process here, that game developers will see that you still need to have humans part of the loop. You can't completely hand it over to technology, and that everyone has to be at the negotiation table willing to compromise. And I think that will end up there. I think, though, we're probably going to have probably at least a couple of months of some pretty ardent back and forth, because there are billions at stake here. The video game industry is larger than the music and movie industry combined in terms of global revenue. And so they have even more to lose here. And studios aren't going to willingly walk away from that, or walk away from an opportunity to save money using technology. So going to be a bitter battle, but ultimately I think humans will still prevail.
Whoa, I had no idea about the volume of that industry.
Yeah.
If you had asked me, is music and video combined larger or smaller than video games, I would have said that music and movies were larger by an order of magnitude. So this is kind of shocking to me. But I guess I shouldn't be surprised with all the consoles and all the controllers and all the titles. It's big bucks. And so I guess...
Exactly. And it's also apps on your phone or your tablet. So gaming has really moved out
Candy Crush, Carmi. You haven't been responding to my invites to Candy Crush.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll change that as soon as we get off.
Or what's the stereotypical game that older folks played on Facebook? Oh, yeah, Farmville.
I don't even know if that's still around.
I hope it is. I would be remiss if we did not mention Elon Musk, because he stinks today just as much as he did yesterday, and just as much as he likely will tomorrow. He shared a fake or manipulated video of presidential candidate and Vice President Harris He did it seemingly in violation of X, although I'm just calling it Twitter's policies. He refuses to call his daughter by the correct name. I'm going to refuse to call his platform by the right name. I do wonder sometimes, did he just buy Twitter so that he could do whatever the he wanted? That's my question. Mm-hmm. I sometimes think yes, because he does things on there that he would have gotten banned for doing earlier, and that he currently bans other users for. I saw a leak recently. I don't know how true it is, but there's some back-end data that leaked on Twitter, and basically some accounts are flagged, and it's like a good flag. It's like, oh, I can share misinformation, I can be racist, I can use banned keywords, and my post won't be moderated, or I can have a regular Twitter account, and my post will be moderated, and like all these kind of like alt-right people and conservative agitators, they all have their accounts on Twitter kind of like allowed to spread nonsense without any consequence, and other people aren't. Of course, Elon Musk's account is likely allowed to spread whatever nonsense he wants. It's his company. He bought it. But did he drain all that money just so he could be a nuisance, just so he could be a nudnik, just so he could share stuff like this? Maybe, and he just doesn't care. He just keeps doing it. And this video could hurt Harris's presidential campaign. I mean, some wild interpretation of it is it's an election interference, but I'm not going to go quite that far. Tell me about the video. Tell me about how this happened, and what's the internet's reaction to it?
So it was a video that was based on footage of the vice president and the presidential candidate Kamala Harris, giving a speech, but they used artificial intelligence to put words in her mouth, where the video, according to the video, Kamala Harris was saying that President Biden is senile, that and the ad sort of insinuated that she doesn't know anything about running the country, and it accused her of being a diversity hire,
which is really just racist code, right?
Of course it is, but it's using technology to create that synthetic asset, which looks real. And then to add insult to injury, Mr. Musk did not state in reposting it and sharing it on his account that it in fact was AI generated, that AI was used to craft the message and it wasn't based on anything real. And that's what's troubling is as AI becomes terrifyingly effective at creating video that you can't tell the difference whether it's real or not, that labeling is absolutely crucial to ensuring that it does not become a tool of misinformation, that as long as you label it as, well, this is AI generated, make of it as you will, you have the choice to decide whether to consume it or not, but at least this is not real. And so, yeah, I mean, Elon Musk is playing the role of the kid who brings the ball to the playground, and then they make the rules. He owns the megaphone. He's happily spreading whatever he wants on it in absolute violation of those terms of use. And there are no consequences because it's his ball, it's his playground, his rules. And as in the lead up to the election in November, we are seeing a definite acceleration, this being a perfect example of it, in the spread of misinformation, by individuals like Mr. Musk, who probably should know better. And in fact, I think he knows exactly what he's doing. He's just happy that he has access to the tool that gives him that kind of coverage. It's terrifying. And anyone who's concerned about election misinformation and disinformation, this is an example of why we need better protections, because we are absolutely vulnerable to this kind of thing. And Mr. Musk is only going to amp this up in the months to come.
It's really obnoxious to see. And I want to rewind. When people use the like pseudo pejorative, the kind of like coded insult, diversity hire, it's just code for racism, sexism, or prejudice. It's so stupid.
Exactly. And they're saying the quiet part out loud. And unfortunately, they have access to the technology that allows them to do that. And there is no legislation that holds them to account. So he's not going to get punished. He's not going to be fined. He's not going to be sanctioned. He's not going to have his right to use this tool in this way removed. Ultimately, society is not well served when you have tools being used in this way to spread this kind of information and, quite frankly, stoke the fires of racism and xenophobia at a time when it's already bad to begin with. And this is only making it worse.
Well, society may be served badly by that. It's served well by you being here, Carmi. Carmi Levy, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Great being with you, David. Really appreciate being here as well.
That was time for technology time. In a few minutes' time, we will get serious here with Tony 5. There has been a tragedy in England that's left the whole country speechless. 3 small children were murdered. They were stabbed at a Taylor Swift-themed event in Southport. Tony's going to walk us through this one, because after all, he's our foreign correspondent, and regrettably, sometimes we got to go serious. We are here. It is Wednesday morning, July the 31st, and Tony Five, foreign correspondent, is here, and here's his introduction music. Tony Five. Hi, Tony.
David, I always love it when the dynamic shifts and we level the playing field, as it were. So this is quite early for you. It's quite normal for me. So hence, I sound relatively sane, and you will forget how to spell your name.
Well, the second one's true, and it rhymed, so you get points for that.
Thank you very much.
But you never sound sane, so I can't give it to you.
Well, I'm relatively sane. I'm also relatively... I'm pensive today. I had a bit of a rough night. Didn't sleep very well. I think I carry a lot of empathy in me, and I sort of feel things. So I don't know whether you've heard the news in the US, but there was a big thing that happened in Stockport last night, which is near Liverpool.
No, what happened?
So a 17-year-old kid, so yesterday morning, a 17-year-old kid went on a mad knifing rampage and killed 3 children. And they were just these innocent 6-year-old kids. They were doing I think a dance workshop for Taylor Swift, and adults got injured, and and I don't know whether they were killed. It's horrific, David, and I think it brings it home to me about the chaos that's happening in the world. And my nieces are the same age, so I was devastated. And I think the whole country is in this sort of state of shock. And we spoke recently about how social media is playing this huge third witness, right, of what's going on. So I think the media purposely didn't give anything away. So these lunatics called the English Defence League, who are basically the right-wing group, very similar to these lunatics that you have in the States and in Canada, who
QAnon and alt-right and
correct,
Ku Klux Klan and
correct. So predominantly white guys. There was a vigil held for these kids last night, and so under the sort of impression that these guys would have turned up and behaved, they came there with crates of beer and half-open shirts. So it's going to kick off, right? And rather than having a peaceful vigil for these beautiful children, these guys went absolutely mental, and they burnt a riot vehicle. I think 50 police officers were injured.
What?
And they just, right? And they just took over. So this is the second time in maybe 2 weeks that this has happened, that these organised groups, and they destroyed a mosque, sorry. And the sad thing is, the perpetrator, the guy who was born in the UK, he's not even Muslim. It was just
racism and hate and assumptions, and in the wake of a horrible tragedy. It's like using the tragedy, which is already making the nation feel terrible, and using it to just behave awfully.
And so they destroyed this mosque, which is a central part of this community, and wanted to fight. They fought everybody that wanted to turn up. It's just insanity, fueled by obviously very warm weather we're in, which obviously always brings out the idiots as well. And they brought beers and stuff like that. So I don't know whether you've seen it on the news or anything there at the moment, but it's just absolute insanity. So I think last night I was listening to news, and I shouldn't listen to news because it really bugged me. And there was lots of people, famous people, not so famous people, just talking about in the morning, because we're on a summer holiday here at the moment. The kids have got vacation. And these kids were just having a good time. And can you imagine, right? These 6 and 7-year-olds, the whole life in front of them, are just stabbed from this 17. They still don't know the reason, the rhyme, why. And I think we're at that point, which is why I spoke to you before. Me, you, anybody else who sits online, on Twitter, or on Reddit, we can't make an assumption. We don't know why that guy did it. Did he have mental health problems? Was he just against children? Did he not like Taylor Swift? There's all these ridiculous things from each range, and there's people blaming every single thing. I've read people who said this is a Taylor Swift fault because the guy didn't like Taylor Swift, so he killed 3 children, all the way to he's like I said, a Muslim fanatic, where he wasn't. He was born in Wales. It really got to me, and I wondered this morning, because I knew I was going to talk to you now, and there's some issues. Does anything that you hear in the news get to you, or are you able to sort of separate it? I mean, you work in the media, you speak to various, you don't just speak to me, you speak to however many other people, and they must talk to you about controversial things that possibly upset you. Does anything get to you? Does anything really sit on you? Or are you able just to let it go?
Yes, of course.
Yeah?
I'm a human being, Tony. Just like it gets
Yeah.
to you, it gets to me. I don't. It's a bizarre question. Yes.
No, but what?
When you were
'Cause we've never
describing
really
this tragedy, I had my hands like at my neck on my chest.
Right.
I don't even know what to say when I hear about children being.
Yeah, it's we've never really spoken about like the serious topics as they happen. We've kind of spoken about it
Yeah.
while afterwards, but this is happening now at the moment. This is something that just before the phone call I was listening to, because they're still trying to work out, and you can see there's you need to go online. So one of the things that came out of this is fantastic. Out of if you look on Twitter, guys, if anybody's listening to this, if you go onto the issue, there is a thug. There's only no way to describe him. An English short-headed, overweight thug who's throwing bricks and taunting the police. Behind him is obviously the English Defence League. Somehow,
What's the English
they're
Defence
thrown-
League?
they are the group, the English Defence League. They're like the National Front, like you said, the Ku Klux Klan. All
Okay,
these
that's like
QAnon.
the predecessor or the what's the descendant of like England First Party or whatever. Or
Correct.
yeah.
Yes. Correct. You are correct.
Like
So
National
they're called the
Front
English-
kind of thing, or
yes.
yeah.
They're the English Defence League. They hate everything from Jews to American pizza type thing.
It's funny because the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, is a New York-based like organization that tries to fight anti-Semitism, but I think they go a little too far. But they like if you start saying anti-Semitic stuff in the news, they're the ones who make the complaints. They're the ones who go after you. Anyway, not important. I'm completely derailing here. There was this thug with the brick, and who's protesting or rioting based on a national tragedy. What happens then?
So he gets hit by a random brick in the head, which more than likely gave him a concussion. As he's now stumbling, holding his head, walking back to the camera, another brick hit him in the groin. Phenomenal.
I don't love violence, but of all the people I would mind a brick to hit, he's probably like top on the list of not caring.
Right.
So, yeah.
So, dear listener, we're going to pause for a second while David uploads this video, watches it, and gives his commentary on it. Go.
All right, I called up the video. Let's go through it with a reaction. We got a bunch of cops, a bunch of riotous. Oh my God! Gets hit in the head.
Brilliant.
Drops his brick. Gets hit in the
Brilliant.
crotch.
Brilliant.
Now, his friend's helping him. Yeah.
And so describe the man. So I don't know, how would you describe him from a US point? So I would call him an EDL thug. He's basically your general, generic, racist, white, sort of skin-headed thug. Even though he's not skinhead, he's got short cropped hair. But these are the guys who are generally very, very, and they're all very similar. So I'm not paintbrushing it, but I guess I am.
These are like the Tiki Torch guys who remember, what was it, in Charlotte or Charlottesville? They had the Tiki Torches and they were screaming, "The Jews will not replace us." Remember that rally in the US? It made national news.
No, I was never part of that. I never got an invite, but carry on.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't know who I'm replacing, but I apologize for you. He kind of looks like a European soccer hooligan with a white supremacist, flavor twist.
Yes. Very good.
It's like if the flavor was soccer hooligan, the swirl in the ice cream tub was, white supremacist. That's what he looks like.
Which is quite ironic because obviously we are famous for our football or sports hooliganism. Weirdly, football, as in English soccer, gets it all. English rugby, hardly any. But I've never... I know you guys have it in the States for but it's not as prominent in American football or baseball. I don't really see it.
Oh, come on. I lived in San Francisco when the 49ers, the football team, won 2 years. I think they won 1 year, lost a year, won another year. It was a friendly riot, though. You could be in the streets with a cop car being turned over and a mattress being lit on fire and feel safe. Because everyone's having fun. It's a fun riot. I feel like with soccer rioting, there's an anger to it,
Oh my God, yeah. You wouldn't want to be anywhere near there with your kids. Whereas your one sounds like a sort of Sunday sort of farmer's market. Brilliant. Let's all go turn off a cop car.
But to answer your question, during July 6th, is that the right date?
January 6th. No, leave that in.
Well, no, because it's serious. Fine, I'll leave it in. During January the 6th, and when COVID first hit,
Are you sure it's not July 6th, David?
No, January.
Carry on.
I was at home watching the news, worried that society was going to collapse.
Right.
When mass shootings happen, I'm moved by it, but I don't feel like the world's going to end. Like, I don't fear for my own safety when I see it. I just feel sad for the country, and sad for obviously the people involved. But there have been events where I watch the news and I am scared.
Genuine question. Do you or any of your friends who live out there feel numb? Because these things happen in the States. So, for example, what happened yesterday here is so unique to England. Do you feel it numb?
I mean, I wish I could say the answer to that question was no, but it's also not yes. I'm somewhere in between numb and not numb. I'm getting more numb. That's a tragedy. We're here with Tony Five talking about the incident in Stockport, where 3 children were killed and several people injured at a Taylor Swift-themed event. We'll be back with more of him and more of his foreign corresponding in a moment. We are back with the show that is currently happening.
Fantastic. A true professional broadcast legend. You make Howard Stern worry about his past, present, and future, David.
And multiverse existence. He's not just worried about himself, he's worried about every version of himself that was created at every decision.
Every timeline, you mean? He's worried about every timeline because of you. Fantastic.
Because of this introduction. We're here with Tony Five. He's in London, England. And we just did a little serious. Now I hope we're going to do stupid. Tony, welcome back.
David, wonderful. I have a new section. It's a wonderful thing. It's Tony's topics to talk about, David. Rolls off the tongue, right?
I thought it was Tony's random things to talk about. We discussed this at the break. It's the TRTTTA. Tony's random things to talk about.
Oh, yep. David, TRTTTA is something that I believe many of the listeners will announce and want. It just rolls off the tongue, right?
You just did 4 T's. TRTTTA.
Tony's random things to talk
about.
About.
Should the 2 be a number? So like TRT2TA. Never mind. What is the premise for this new segment, Tony?
David, I have a list of 25 wonderful topics that we can talk about, and you can pick 3. You can pick any 3 random numbers, David, and we will discuss.
It's funny, random numbers. People are bad at picking them. Did you know that?
No, are you going to pick 7 straight away?
Well, that's one thing. People don't want to pick 1 or 25. They never want to pick the first or last number in the set because they feel that's not random enough. They'll rarely repeat numbers because they feel repetition in numbers isn't random, when in fact it is. And they also
Completely
just have
random
preferences. And they like things like 17 and 19, like a 7 or a 9 in the number feels more random. If you're asked to choose a number with, let's say 4 digits, you won't repeat, like you won't do like 2,250 because you're like, there's 2 2s in that. Anyway, we have all these biases around what we think is random, and each one of them contributes to the fact that humans are terrible at picking random numbers. So to that end, I pick numbers 1, 2, and 3.
Perfect. What is the strangest thing in your refrigerator, David?
That's a good question. Like,
I know, right?
Strange as in molding and old?
Just different, odd, strange. You can define strange however you want. I'll tell you what mine is. I've got a very small, maybe 2 inches size, figurine of my head in my fridge.
What?
Genuinely.
You know what? I don't need to know the answer to the question why. It should be obvious.
Correct. I'll send you a video of it later just to prove that I am actually telling the truth. I don't know whether any of your releases online ever host videos, but it's a fantastic video. There's a little beautiful head that I had made in Japan by one of these guys who makes it out of porcelain. It really does look like me. It hasn't melted yet. It's been about 7-8 years, and it's just in my head on my top shelf. It freaks people out when they go and get a drink or something. But yeah,
I'm pretty sure porcelain doesn't melt, so you can take it out of the fridge. But hey, what can I? So it might be Miranda's skincare vials. She has like these vials of skincare that spoil. They need to be refrigerated. I guess that's not that odd. Right now I have 2 kinds of breadcrumbs that I made, like toasted panko. Yeah, one is a garlic lemon and parsley panko, and the other is a spicy panko that I've toasted in olive oil.
Oh, and it's like a crust, isn't it? That's something that you could put on fish or what,
Well,
chicken
I
maybe?
use one for a salad and one for a pasta, which are still in my fridge and are both gone very bad. So that
Lovely.
Worcestershire sauce. I'm going to go with that.
Worcestershire, yeah, because obviously it's not a big thing over there, right? So Worcestershire sauce you've got there, yeah?
Because mostly because I don't know how to say it.
Oh, where did you get that from? Like a Brit
Worcestershire
store?
sauce. What is it?
Worcestershire. It's actually called Worcester sauce.
Worcester. Like
Yeah.
Worcester.
No,
Worcester.
Worcester. The way to say it is Worcester. Wooster.
Worcester. Worcester?
Yeah, Worcester sauce.
Worcester.
But actually, reading it phonetically, it's Worcestershire.
Worcestershire.
Yeah, Worcestershire, but it's just Worcester sauce.
Okay. I have...
Leon Perrins, right?
Say
Leon
it.
Perrins is Leon Perrins is the famous brand that we have here in the UK. Leon Perrins Worcester sauce, yeah.
I have a friend. This is parody, and none of this is true because I would never admit to this, and of course it's illegal. But I have a friend who house sits for me every year, and she's from out of
Okay.
state, and
Yep.
she left mushroom chocolates in my fridge because I guess they need to be refrigerated. So I have
Wow.
psilocybin chocolate. I mean, I don't have psilocybin chocolate because that would be illegal, and I'm just saying this for parody purposes. I would never admit to a crime. They're not mine, but they're in there.
Wow. Are they quite a hit then? So if you take a chunk, would you get like high and stuff?
No, these are micro doses, which you just kind of take one and barely feel anything. I assume, I've never done it, it would be illegal
Right.
for me to do it. Okay, next
Wow.
question.
What would you do with $10 million?
I'd invest it in one of the Vanguard
Put it in a
ETFs.
savings account. God, I hate people like you. Oh, well, I'd put it in a diversification ISA and I'd watch my portfolio grow. God, just spend it on something.
I got to spend it all?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the caveat.
So let's change this a bit. You've got $10 million and you got to spend it in a year. And if you somehow
Yeah.
earn interest or on it or make money on it, you also
Oh
have
my
to spend it.
God, let's not talk about the
I'm just saying I would
financial
invest
planning
it
version
for
of
a year, the whole year. What's 5% of 10 million? That's 500 grand. So I'd invest it.
I think you'll find it's about $69,000.
I'd
carry
invest
on.
it for a year. That gives me 500 grand to save, and then I would blow the 10,000 on something stupid. I would probably spend a lot of it on a house, but not. I don't
Okay.
need a $10 million house, but I would want a nice
No.
house. You know, I
You
would.
still have to go through all the hassle, even with all that money.
I know.
They probably still wouldn't let you live
You
in
know
the what do they call it? Apartment block. What do they call that? Co-op.
How much? I mean, even if I go to like nice restaurants every night, even if I blow $400 a night on a restaurant, if I spent $300 a night at a restaurant, that'd be $100,000 in a year, which is a lot of money. But I've not even really bit into the 10,000. How much is an expensive trip?
Oh God, it's how long is a piece of string, right? An expensive trip you can spend, I don't know, $20,000 a night. Yeah.
Oh, a night? Well, what?
A night?
I don't think I would have fun at a $10,000. Like, I wouldn't have fun on a super yacht. I would just, there'd be all the staff, and I'd be like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? I could get my own drink. You know, I'll make my
Yeah,
own bed.
Exactly. But that's quite nice about you. You're not sort of that sort of level where you can just look down on people. You'd want to talk to them. You're very much like, you like talking to people, so the staff would be cool.
I watch a reality show with people who work on yachts. They're like not supposed to talk to you. They're supposed to
No, I
act
know.
like they're in a different strata of the universe.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, it's not strictly true, but I just don't know how I would spend it. I guess I would just
Okay.
have to buy like several houses. One in New
Yes.
York, one in Los Angeles. Yeah, that's it. I'd buy like $3 million houses and I'd spend the rest of it on stupid stuff. That's what I would do.
Cool.
Because I
So,
just don't think I
Toronto?
could spend the money. Like, even if I go to the maximum of my tastes and do those things every day, it's not
Yeah.
even going to chip away at it.
Not fulfilling. So one house in New York, one house in Toronto. Where's your third? London?
Los Angeles.
Why Los Angeles? What's there?
I want to retire there.
You are joking.
No.
What is there to do? Oh my God, I can't believe we've never spoken about it. That place is a godforsaken Sodom and Gomorrah. What are you doing in Los Angeles?
It's just a nice lifestyle, you know, like big property, a lawn, you know. I wouldn't live like in the chaos of it all. I'd live like outside
Okay.
of the city, but it's such, compared to New York where everything is difficult and the city is
Okay.
trying to destroy you and force you to leave at every turn. Los Angeles is like relaxing. It's a slower pace of life. I'm not talking about the show business side. I'm not going to like live
Okay.
I'm not going to live in like West Hollywood or something like that, but
Right.
like up in the hills if I can afford it, you know, something like that.
Hollywood Hills. Okay, but there's no way in between that would give you that level of enjoyment. Like, I don't know. You've gone to two extremes. You've gone from the East Coast to the West Coast, and you've got loads of stuff in between. So
All right,
is there
New
nowhere
York,
in the
Toronto,
middle?
and London. I do think London is like the third place or the fourth place I could live.
Okay, cool. And you could live in London, do you think? It's not far off New York, though, to be fair.
It is and it isn't. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, you've been here. You know, it's different in a lot. I mean, I think if I grew up in like Mumbai, you know, and then I went to London, New York.
That's in Africa, isn't it?
Yes.
Where's that?
No, it's in India. Or if I came from Mongolia, inner.
That's definitely in Africa.
It's not. It's between
Okay.
China and Russia. Or is that outer Mongolia?
No, it's Edinburgh you're thinking of.
Inner is between outer and China, and outer is between inner and Russia. Not important. I think if I was from somewhere in the world that, you know, didn't speak English, that was a very different society, I would consider London and New York to be similar. But because I'm from Toronto and I live in New York, and because you're from London, you can't say that that's similar. There's some stark differences.
There is. I mean, you guys have got the New York pizza. We don't have it here in London.
What's the third question?
The third question is, what would be the perfect crime?
Yes, is the answer to that.
I know.
The perfect crime, something that's victimless.
Okay, wow. Is there a victimless crime? That's the second question. Is there such a thing as a victimless crime,
I
David?
think if you grow your own illegal substances, like cannabis or mushrooms, and
Okay.
you're not hurting anyone, and it's like locked in your house, you know, so no children can get at it or whatever, and then you consume it, yeah, I think that's victimless, right?
I suppose so. Yeah, that's the kind of way to do it. Do you believe that things like that were outlawed purely on a monetary basis? That there is, like, for example, cannabis and heroin and things like that?
I think there's a history of like racism to some of it. I mean, cannabis came up from Latin America to the U.S.
Wow, okay.
I don't know. It's a longer conversation. The perfect crime.
No, I think it's that whole shooting a bullet, an ice bullet into someone, it melts, nobody knows who done it.
Ice bullets. Yeah, those are definitely a real thing. All right, you win that one. Tony,
Thank you,
what a pleasure.
David. Always a chore. I'm going to the freezer now, but not what you think for.
What are you, a fucking poet now? In a few moments' time, it's Gary Dierenfeld, therapist for Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. Gary's going to walk us through bad-mouthing. You know, when one parent bad-mouths the other to a child, that is not an easy position for a kid. Gary's got thoughts on it, and I'm looking forward to unpacking this one. Well, our next guest joins us freshly returned from New York City. It's Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday with therapist Gary Dierenfeld to talk topics of mental health and such. And Gary, you were in New York and you didn't call me, and welcome to the show also.
The irony was you were in Toronto anyways, trading places.
But you still call.
Did you call me when you were here?
No.
Son of a gun. There you go. Quit projecting onto me.
Fair enough. But it's a little different because Toronto's my hometown. I'm visiting family. It's not like I'm on vacation.
Actually, I was also visiting family. We have two nieces that we also spent time with. It was, oh my God, is New York ever busy? Like, my idea of a holiday is walking in the woods. It is not a big city. And the only reason I went is because my son said, Dad, come with me and Sai, our grandson, and we'll make it a grandfather, father, grandson holiday. How could I say no to that?
I mean, if you hate New York enough, you can say no.
True enough, but I love my son more. And he is such an organizer. Oh my God. We did so many things each and every day, traipsing that 7-year-old around like it was nobody's business. And the little guy basically kept up. And then we would take breaks, go back to the hotel and let him rest because those little legs had to keep up with our big legs. It was amazing. We went to the ice cream museum. Have you been there?
Yeah, I live right downtown, huh?
Yeah, you live by the ice cream museum.
Yeah, like 5-minute walk away. You should have called Gary just to say you were in town. There's that thing from Curb Your Enthusiasm where Larry goes to New York and he's like, I was very busy, but his cousin's like, you still should have called.
I should have. I was expecting a museum. This is an ice cream machine. It was built in, and this is who invented it.
No, it's like an art installation, pretty much.
No, it's more like a fun house for 7-year-olds.
Yeah. It's wild in there. I mean, adults go. It's a lot of social media photographs get taken there.
Oh, absolutely. But it was basically a fun house where you can throw balls and look in weird mirrors and play Skeetle and eat as much ice cream as you want.
Delicious. Delicious.
What kid wouldn't love that?
I know I'm talking to someone who grew up in Toronto, and Toronto was too big for them, so you went to, the middle of butt nowhere with population U. 2 hours north, 1 hour north?
An hour north. And I love it because it's so quiet. I'm not a big city person.
But what is the Steve Martin quote? New York is like Toronto with more stuff. It's way crazier.
Holy mackerel. And we flew into LaGuardia. You can see the city. It's huge. And then you fly back and you can take Toronto in one glance relative to New York. And but I love all the green space of Toronto. Yeah, you've got Central Park, but we've got all of Toronto. So I was happy to get back. I was happy to be there. I loved my time with my son and grandson, and then I was happy to be back.
Well, we got trees in New York. I think we're up to 2 of them.
No kidding. Apart from what's the Central Park?
Central Park, Prospect Park. There's a lot of parks, but yeah, the city's an urban wasteland. Well, I'm glad you visited. I'm glad you realized it's always good to do things every now and again that you don't like to remind yourself why you don't like them.
No, but the thing was, I wound up loving the trip. I really, really did. I had Prince Street Pizza.
That's my neighbor.
Come on, serious?
I mean, my girlfriend doesn't like when I say my exact address because she's worried about our stalker, and I mean that as in the singular sense because there's only one listener of the show, and they're probably a stalker. But I live within a 1 to 10 minute walk to Prince Street Pizza, somewhere between there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I had a slice. It was amazing. It was so good.
I actually had it for lunch today.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then we went to Minetta's.
Yeah. I'm about 15 minutes from there, Minetta Tavern. That's a nice spot.
It was really, I felt like I was in a 1950s or 60s gangster film.
I don't know that the TV show with Martin Scorsese and Fran Lebowitz, Pretend It's a City, was shot in Minetta Tavern. There's a scene that's Martin Scorsese sits down with this eccentric author who's like the quintessential New Yorker. If you can think of the angry New Yorker in a hurry, in an overcoat, screaming, "I'm walking here," that's Fran Lebowitz. She's amazing. So Martin Scorsese just sat down and created a TV show around her that was just his conversations with her while he can barely get a word in, and he's just laughing the whole time. But one of the sets, if it's not Minetta Tavern, it may as well be Minetta Tavern because it's just such a New York restaurant. It's been there since 1781, maybe 1528.
And there, like in the booth that we were in, the picture on the wall was, the Minetta founder, Mr. Minetti. And Minetta or Minetti?
I don't know, man. I'm not a
Okay.
Minetta historian.
All right. And there was his picture with Rocky Marciano. I'm not a fighter person. So, but one of the old time fighters. And I was expecting to see every big time movie mafia player in that restaurant.
Yeah,
It was a rock.
it's that kind of place. I mean, it's not for the faint of wallet, but it's a great restaurant.
Yeah. In the scheme of things, it wasn't bad. We also had not pho, but with all the noodles.
Ramen.
We went to a ramen place. Oh my goodness.
Was it what's the famous one?
It is a famous one.
Momofuku.
I don't know if that was
Doesn't matter. Okay, not important. You were in New York. I got some feedback from someone I work with the other day that I don't get to the point. So let's get to the point, Gary. I want to talk about bad mouthing. First, let's talk about it from something that you likely encounter in your practice. You're a marital counselor, you're a couples counselor, you're a social worker. I'm sure you see separated parents with a kid. And that's an area where it's funny. Sometimes people get divorced or separated because of immaturities. That's an area where you got to be mature. If you're sharing custody of a child with someone, no matter what you think of them, unless they're a serial killer and they're behind bars, like you got to be very, even then, honestly, if your significant other's behind bars, you still should be mature about it. But it's just, it takes such maturity, and it's so important to the way in which you deal with your child as it comes to speaking about the other. Bad-mouthing.
Yes, bad mouthing. So, I used to do a lot of what we called custody and access assessments. Now we call them parenting assessments. Fine. Where we're trying to sort out the quantum of time a child should spend with one parent or the other and who makes the decisions affecting the child's life. So I used to do that. I also used to mediate parenting disputes. I don't do that stuff anymore. It's gotten too crazy. But it's not uncommon that you have at least one parent bad-mouthing the other parent to the kid. And what these parents don't realize is that kids look up and they say, well, I'm half of this parent and I'm half of that parent. So if you badmouth the parent to the child, then the child has to look inside themselves and say, which half of me is bad?
Right.
And then if you're a parent that wants to, like, it's got to be even Steven, they badmouth me, I'm going to get them back, I'll badmouth them to the kid. All you've done is set up a situation where then the kid looks internally and says, both halves are bad. So, one of the best ways to screw up a kid in the middle of a divorce is badmouth the other parent. But David, people come to me and they say, well, what do you do? What do you do when the kid comes to you and says, other parent called you a this? And I'm going to tell you what you do. You look at that child and you say, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry that you have to hear the other parent saying such horrible things. How are you, sweetheart?
Yeah, just change the focus.
That's it. You show the empathy for the child for having been put in that position versus getting defensive. And in that circumstance, all of a sudden, whatever bad was said about you, the child's experience of you is positive, empathetic, caring, supportive. That's how you deal with this stuff.
There's a couple things I want to latch onto here. First one was when you were talking about when both parents are kind of negative about the other one. You're creating a race to the bottom between the two of you, and the loser is your kid, okay?
Always. There was a good movie, it's got to be a good 10 years ago, called The Squid and the Whale. The Squid and the Whale. Don't ask me who stars in it. I never remember names. But, there's several scenes where the children are coping with the parental divorce. And, a kid who's been told he looks like his father looks in the mirror and can't stand himself. The result of believing he looks like his father, who's been bashed and, is the scoundrel and the bad guy. It certainly helps us to understand the impact of all that behavior on a child's well-being. And, one of the fastest ways to make a kid do poorly in school, behave poorly, feel suicidal, turn to drugs or alcohol, is to get them caught in that middle. When I'm working with these separated parents, people ask me privately, what's my goal for the kids? My goal is that they literally survive their parent separation when they're that nasty.
When we come back, we're going to emphasize that powerful tool Gary just gave us, How Are You? And continue this conversation about bad-mouthing. It's Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday with Gary Dierenfeld. Did I say that already?
No.
I said it now, Gary. We are back with Gary Dierenfeld, an expert in family and marital therapy. If you'd like to look him up online, perhaps retain him for his services, it's www.yoursocialworker.com. I just have him on this show every week, so I don't have to pay for his services. I just get the advice under the guise of, we're talking about it for people to learn. Now I'm just soliciting free advice. Gary, welcome back.
Good to be with you.
We're talking about bad-mouthing, in particular when two separated parents badmouth the other to the child. And one strategy that you gave before the break, which I love, it's so simple, but it's so powerful. When parent A badmouths parent B to the child, and then parent B has to hear about it, rather than get into the weeds and say the other parent's a jerk, or they shouldn't have said that, or I'm not like that, you just say, I'm really sorry that happened to the kid, and how are you? Because it really is just about the kid. It's not really about your PR with the other person. And it deflects, and it's caring, and it's so simple, and I wish I thought of it before, but that's why I have you on. These things aren't complicated, but they're helpful, and I'm really glad you emphasized it.
And the tough part for parents in that situation is getting their own ego out of the way. Because when you can get your own ego out of the way and concentrate on the experience of the child, that child's always going to be the winner.
Yeah. And that's who we want to win. The kids. Think of the children, Gary. Think of the children. I wanted to take this conversation about bad mouthing in a little bit of a different direction. You mentioned getting your ego out of the way. I was a depressed kid. I'm now medicated, diagnosed, but I didn't go to any kind of mental health practitioner as a kid. I don't know, it was the 90s, and my parents just kind of left me alone a lot. I was lonely a lot. I did not get along with my parents. I was as much a punk, an ingrate, as they were not very loving, not very attentive, kind of ignored me. Like, it was two sides of the coin. Now, I was a child. You can't really blame me.
Right. And do you think you would have been that punk and ingrate had your parents been loving and caring? No, it would have been different.
I do think so, but it's the short version of how I ended up here today. I think if I had supportive parents, I would just be like in, I don't know, insurance sales. I wouldn't need the attention. So in a way, they did me a favor, but that's besides the point. But I used to badmouth them both to their face, and I had a journal where I wrote some just awful things. I just thought of the meanest things I could say to my parents. Like, not even true. Like, I think one time I wrote this long thing about how my dad has all the bad qualities of his father. You know, that's not something somebody wants to hear, that you remind me of your father, you know, when especially the bad qualities. My girlfriend always complains. She's like, oh, I've got my mother's this, or I say I've got my mother. You know, you outline the bad qualities of your parents, and then when you see them in yourself, it's not a nice thing. And my dad's dad, may he rest in peace, was not perfect. I really liked him, but was he great to my father? That I don't know. Well, I do know, and probably not. Back on point. My mom for sure read that journal, and I think it just made our relationship bad. You know, I think she felt I was ungrateful, I was mean. She had all these labels that she sort of pegged me at 14, and it took me another 15 years or so to kind of transcend them. I don't think she handled the bad-mouthing well. Now, I shouldn't have done it. I'm not proud of it. I don't think bad-mouthing's a good thing ever. But I was hurting, and I wanted them to hurt too, which is not a great thing to be doing. That just perpetuates cycles of bad behavior.
So let me talk about normal, healthy families for a minute. Mm-hmm. In normal, healthy families, children still get pissed off. And one of the ways that children deal with themselves when they're pissed off is to badmouth their parents. It's just not uncommon in that circle. You're nasty. You're mean to me. Why are you being like all this stuff? They throw it all at the parent. And so there's an element where it's not I don't like using the word normal, but where it's not unusual to see that kind of bad mouthing of the child by the child of the parent. The parent who is themselves emotionally intact is going to look at that child and say, oh my goodness, you have some pretty strong feelings about me today. Okay, I still love you. And by the way, you still can't stay out late, or you still have to put the device away. But the emotionally healthy parent looks past that, can still empathize, and yet can still hold the child accountable to expectations. You know, I have adult children who now will try going back to their parents to, in a sense, confront them. I don't really like that word. I prefer to maybe inform the parents, look, this is what I experienced growing up by you, and here's how it affected me. I don't know if you realize that. And if you can present that to a parent, in a sense, not attackingly, non-judgmentally, but informationally, some parents will step up and go, you know what? I didn't realize that's what I did. I didn't mean to. And, you know, mea culpa. If you have the parent that says, oh, give me a break, get over it. Why are you hard? You're learning where you still need to keep those boundaries intact.
I did my best. I did what I thought was right. You think other families have it any better, you know? Now my parents in their 70s are very receptive to when I say things like this. They act the way you would expect well-adjusted parents to act. But 15 years ago, it would be like, we did our best. We did what we thought was right. And I'm like, oh my God.
There is some truth to that too. You know, but the parent who can say, you were right, and I've grown up since then, and I would do it differently now. And I'm sorry that that hurt you. Oh my God, that's a wonderful parent. That's wonderful.
What is it like being so amazing, Gary? Your kids must have some grievances with you.
Oh, absolutely. I remember my son was about 20 at the time at university, and I was pissing him off. And I don't remember what it was. You never remember what it's about. You only remember the affect, the feelings.
Yeah.
And he let me have it. And I let him. I just let him, in a sense, let me have it. He needed that. I said, okay.
Blow off the steam.
Yeah. And we're great now. We were great then too, quite frankly. But and that's why I say there's a part of this that's normal in growing up, where we start to see our parents as human, and we can point out some of their foibles, because we've all got them. I don't care, including me, David. For goodness sakes, including me.
Sure.
And hopefully we can be humble enough to hear that from our kids. And, if they've been harboring bad feelings about us or themselves, let that be a repairable moment.
Absolutely. And I've known those moments to be very repairable when you finally have that conversation. You acted this way. I felt this way. Gary, you're not touchy. You don't let your ego get in the way with your family, with your counseling, with your clients, I assume. But when it comes to Gary versus large corporations that have bad customer service...
I was at it again last night.
Well, okay, give it to me quickly. What happened?
I bought a large Lazy Susan for inside of a cupboard. It was too big. They said that they do refunds on Amazon from this company. I go to do a refund, and it says postage required. And this is a very heavy item. I imagine the postage would have been $25 to $35, and it really annoyed me. So I get back in touch with the company and says, there's nothing that would say postage is required. You say that you give refunds. I expect you to handle it the way Amazon always handles it. You're paying for the postage. They said no. I escalated it to Amazon, and lo and behold, they're paying for postage.
Yada, yada, yada. Postage paid.
Never lose your mind over this stuff. Keep your cool.
Gary, what a pleasure. Thank you for going over bad-mouthing with me. I wish I could say mean things about you, but all I can say is I appreciate your time, and thanks for coming here.
Take care.
Gary Dierenfeld, social worker. I was about to say socialist, but I guess, maybe.
Maybe.
Social worker, therapist. Find him at yoursocialworker.com. This concludes Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. The cartoon The Simpsons has accurately predicted the future an eerie number of times. We're going to talk to an expert in a few moments about the cartoon, about some really strange things like Siegfried and Roy's tiger attacking one of them and Trump getting elected. The Simpsons called it before it happened, and we're going to hear more about that. There have been a striking number of times that the television show The Simpsons has predicted the future in eerie ways. I'm here to discuss those, go over them with the co-host of Woohoo Classic Simpsons Trivia. You can catch that at the Dive Shop in Toronto. Next date is August the 14th if you're in that city. Her name is Chris Brazeau. Chris, thank you for joining me. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
So, I always thought Back to the Future was pretty good about predicting the future president of the U.S. when they named Biff, who was, for me, code for Trump. But Simpsons, they have done a much better job with their predictions. Let's start there. Presidential predictions. What is the Simpsons foretold in North America?
Well, they have foretold that Trump would be president, and that's a little eerie. However, they got it wrong where they said that Trump invested everything into the children. That didn't happen. He put someone in charge of charter schools and just kind of ran that into the ground. So that was inaccurate.
So they got some of it.
Half right.
He's been known to run a department to the ground or two in his day, and hopefully he doesn't get a chance to do another. But what's your favorite of the predictions? Because they're so weird. It's like you go back in time and you think, did this really happen?
There's some things that they're like, okay, these are genuine predictions. And there's others where I think, okay, this was an eventuality. My favorite actual prediction is one that I absolutely did not see coming. And it's a quick little thing. Ron Howard is going in to talk to Fox about pitching his movie about whether buddy cop movie where it's like his best friend lives or dies. His best friend is a pie. Sold. And the little blurb, just when he goes into 20th Century Fox, it just says right under it, like subsidiary of Disney Corporation. And it's like, oh, okay, Fox was doing really well at the time, money-wise. So there's no fathomable, you couldn't even fathom thinking that they would be bought by Disney at that point, because Disney wasn't buying up everybody at that time. And now it's like, how many years later? It's like, oh, well, now I can just stream Simpsons all the time. This was fortuitous.
Do you think these are just smart writers who understand like economics and the industry and where it might go, and it was an educated and what they thought humorous guess? Do you think it was random chance? They were just messing around in the writer's room and they got lucky because there's been so many Simpsons episodes and seasons? Or do you think something else more nefarious is at play?
I think it's a little from column A, a little from column B. So you do get that they do have some very brilliant writers on the show that are paying attention to what is going on in the world. They do also have writers who just think something is going to be hilarious. And it's probably something we would think funny too. Like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if, like, you know, at the circus, the tiger actually went after their handlers, and then lo and behold, it was an eventuality. But again, it's hilarious in cartoon form. Very tragic when it actually does happen to a real person.
Are you talking about Siegfried and Roy right now?
I am.
So what happened there? The Simpsons predicted one of the tigers attacked the two of them?
Exactly. They did. Well, they predicted it years ago with their Gunter and Ernst, their parody of Siegfried and Roy, and their white tiger, attacked them during a show. And then, I think about a decade later, it actually did happen. Unfortunately. But again, hilarious when you see it in cartoon form, but not so much when it actually physically happens to a real person. That's a little terrifying.
I think just a commentary on keeping big, dangerous cats around and doing shows with them, something's bound to happen. And unfortunately and tragically, it did. Back to this kind of election thing in Treehouse of Horror. So every year The Simpsons goes all out, kind of breaks their canon and goes to a surreal universe for a bunch of Halloween shorts. It's like a 3-in-1 episode usually, or at least it used to be. One of the things that happened is Homer goes into a voting booth to try to vote for Barack Obama, and the voting machine doesn't let him. It just says John McCain, John McCain. Was this them predicting that these voting machines would be a source of controversy, a potential for them to be hacked or programmed by bad actors? Or, like, where do you think this one came from?
I think that one did come from technology, unfortunately, will fail us, as well we recently experienced. So it is, I think it was a thing where, either someone getting confused pushing buttons because there's a whole other generation using technology that's not used to using technology. Probably also voting booths could be hacked because apparently it was just a USB key to put the program in. It wasn't hardwired in. There's a lot of little factors like that. Anything with technology can be altered for nefarious purposes. And I think it probably just could have been a failure in the coding and in the programming itself. So when you have writers who, especially like on Futurama, for example, who those writers do cross over quite a bit, that know how this technology does work, they know where the flaws could potentially be. So yeah, of course, The Simpsons, I guess, predicted it, or they just saw the eventual situation that could arise. They were troubleshooting before it happened.
You mix technology, you mix privatization, so getting a third-party private organization to build the technology, and then you mix politics all together. It's bound for disaster.
Oh, yeah.
So you mentioned there's some ones that are a bit of a stretch. What's your favorite that you think that's just too much of a stretch?
So the one I think is a bit of a stretch is the Lady Gaga Super Bowl performance. She was the biggest star in the world. They did something really cool in the animation. Who's to say the producers of her performance of the Super Bowl didn't go, hey, you know what? That actually is a really cool idea. Let's do that. That outfit doesn't look too shabby. It's a callback to Madonna. Hey, this would be really fun. Let's do that. I think they just copied. The same thing with Kamala Harris dressing as Lisa when she was inaugurated as vice president, I think someone on her team kind of had, their finger on the Gen X pulse to be like, hey, you know what's going to get people talking?
I didn't realize that's what she wore.
Purple suit and pearls.
I mean, it's a fine outfit, and it's a very professional and, presidential,
exactly.
vice presidential outfit. But the one I think is a stretch is in the Simpsons movie. Marge sort of is spied on by the NSA. And so some people say, well, they predicted the Edward Snowden. It's like, no, this spy agency has been known since the Cold War to spy on people. It was just that we found out. Like, this was definitely going on anyway, kind of thing.
Oh, no, I guess they've always been listening to you guys. As a Canadian, I don't know. But
I assume they are. When I lived in Canada, I just assumed the Americans watch everything and the Canadian government hands it over. But I don't want to get too much in the conspiracy theory world. Back on the technology train, some people say that Apple had predicted autocorrect. That was on an episode called Lisa on Ice. When someone tries to type in something, they say beat up Martin, but then the text translates it to eat up Martha. It's kind of like when you use the F word and it translates it into duck.
I think more that was a failure in new technologies where they're trying to read script and it's interpreting it wrong. So I don't think that was so much an autocorrect prediction per se. I think it's like, hey, here's this great new thing they're telling you to buy that's hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it doesn't work.
Fair enough. Okay, well, let's step away from the times The Simpsons predicted the future, or allegedly did. You run Simpsons Trivia, so I imagine this one area of The Simpsons is not your only interest. Do you have any things about The Simpsons that, for those who aren't amazing fans of it, might not expect or might be unusual? Some trivia, if you will?
So one of the things about the show that a lot of people probably don't know is that a lot of the writers come out of Harvard.
I know. Conan O'Brien is famously a Harvard alum, a Simpsons alum. Yeah.
A lot of them wrote for National Lampoon, for that magazine out of there. So a lot of the people who have been working on the show were telling jokes. Writing comedy is not something that you kind of just jump into. It's something like these guys have been working on it for decades before they even get a chance to be to write on the show. And people are constantly pitching to get on the show. So The Simpsons generally only chooses the smartest of the smartest and the best of the best to write on their shows, which is probably why some of their predictions, what they write seems like predictions, because they've just chosen, you're not going to have someone hired on the show who just makes fart jokes.
But fart jokes are welcome. And when it's the most seasoned, most intelligent writers writing the best fart jokes.
Exactly.
That's what makes a great show.
It's got to be the best fart joke.
Chris, thanks so much for going over this with me. I appreciate your time.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Chris Brazeau is the co-host of the Woohoo Classic Simpsons Trivia, which can be found at the Dive Shop in Toronto. Check out their next event on August the 14th. Do you feel that your little pet Rover or Mittens or Fufu is a superstar? Well, if they are, they can seek out a pet talent agency to try to get cast in TV and movies and commercials. We're going to talk to somebody from an agency like that in a moment. It's going to be fun. Have you ever wanted your pet Mittens, Fufu, or Rover to be a television or movie star? How would you go about that? Well, one way to do it is to seek out a talent agency, and I'm here with someone who works at one. She is a communications manager for both TN Model and Talent, but of course, more importantly, Purr and Bark Talent, an agency to rep your pets. Her name is Ernestine Perkins. Ernestine, thank you for being here today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I am very much excited to be here. Thank you so much.
I'm excited to have you. How does one get started in the pet talent business? Was this something you always wanted to do, or was this something you fell into?
Well, I first started with, people talent, which is great. And so we put Kids Matters on TV and film on TN side of things. And we've been doing it for about almost 20 years now. And what happened is that we saw that a lot of people now are switching pets for kids. So Canada, you guys have a lot of pets over here. And there's been a huge demand by casting directors for pet talent for commercials, TV, film. If you currently look at any commercial, at least 1 out of 2 commercials has at least a cat, a dog, a parrot. Now Chick-fil-A has cows, which is exciting. So there's always this, a huge market for it. So I've been working on this project to open Perm Park for the past year and a half. And it's been really amazing. I just opened the doors and we've gotten quite a lot of interest, which is really, really cool.
So people were interested in getting their kids into TVs and movies, but that can, I don't know, maybe this is a stereotype, but that can sometimes mess up your kids.
It depends.
Sure. I know you're not going to say that, but I've just heard horror stories. There's also kids who have wonderful careers. They start young, they become great actors, actresses.
Yeah.
But pets, like what would possess an owner to want their pet to be in TV and movies? Like what would the motivation be? I have a cat. He, of course, doesn't listen to me because he's a cat. But assuming I did want to do this, why would I want to do it?
Honestly, it is really, really fun. Like the entire process itself is very, very fun for pet parents and pet owners. What it is you're basically going on set to let your dog run around. Let's say they're doing a commercial for Lysol. Your dog is going to go in the mud, have a good time, go and mess up someone else's house. And then you get paid for it. It's fun. Okay?
Yeah.
And it's crazy because your dog, pets get paid sometimes even more than people do, and which is really, really exciting. And it also is a great, experience and memories made with pets and their owners doing this kind of work. Of course, every pet parent wishes their pets will live forever and will be here with them forever. But, in the case that they don't, they have these really amazing memories with their pets. They're able to go to a commercial and say, oh, I remember when I was on set with that. This is what we did. This is really cool. And it's something that they get to kind of do with their, sometimes they consider their children, which is very interesting. It's an interesting dynamic. But if you are a pet parent and you just like everybody, I feel like every single person has some kind of interest in the, entertainment business at some level, in some capacity. And pets are really, really cute and they're adorable. And every single pet parent thinks that their pet is a talented, amazing dog and cat, which, hey, most of them are. Some of them are not good for TV, but, that's why you kind of come into our office and we kind of evaluate and see if, your pet is the right pet for, what we need.
Well, I love my cat, but I do not think he's like intelligence is not one of his strong suits. You mentioned a dog running around the mud in an example for a Lysol commercial. Can you share another experience or memory or hilarious moment you've seen on set or heard about on set with somebody's pet?
Like, honestly, it was actually pretty recent. We had one of our cats go down for a shoot. Can't tell you what shoot it is because it hasn't come out yet. We love non-disclosures. But they had one on set, and it was a really stormy day here in Toronto, and my brother was not having it. He was not okay, and of course we want to make sure that all of the pets and everybody who are on set, everybody is cool and comfortable. And in this scenario, unfortunately, our cat wasn't too comfortable because of everything that was going on. And he refused to sit. He refused to do anything. And it was a hard time for everybody, including the pet parent. And they gave me a call and they were like, it's not working out. And sometimes it happens that way, but we were able to kind of, after a while, after everything calmed down, got him back on set, got him comfortable again, doing some stuff. So sometimes it's just, it is what it is. They're, and they're animals, and you want to make sure you're not traumatizing the animal. And for us on set, if your pet is not having a good day, sometimes we just gotta put a stop to it and get you home.
Cats, I mean, at their best they listen, but who knows?
Yeah, you never know.
I just feel like training cats, it's a fool's errand. To that end, are there certain breeds or types of pets that are more likely to become great pet actors?
Honestly, I can't tell you. What I can say is temperament is a huge facet to whether or not a pet will do really well. That's one of the biggest things we try to make sure that all of our talents have a good temperament. Because if they go into a space and they are not happy or they cannot get along with other dogs or they don't like kids or they don't like other people, it becomes really, really difficult. Because in the end, there's castings and sets are very different. Every single one you go to. And you end up having new people and new pets and new environments all the time if they're in this business. So we encourage that if you are thinking of bringing a pet, whether it doesn't matter what breed, size, training level, as long as they have a good temperament and they're able to get along with other pets and people, we usually we can figure the rest out, you know. But if they're not happy with anybody, they don't want to be somewhere, then it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder. But we accept accept all breeds, all sizes, all training levels. Sometimes they just want to be bumptious, cute little puppy to run around and have a good time.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of commercials with puppies, and they don't look very trained, but they do look very cute.
No, absolutely. They just want them to look cute. And that suffices a lot. A lot of the time for pets, that suffices. As long as they have a good face, good for them. But, you know, it is just like anything else. You know, we try to make sure that every single environment that our pets go in are safe. And our goal is not to traumatize the pet. Our goal is to make sure that they are comfortable, they are having a good time and enjoying where they are, and so are the pet owners and pet parents and handlers that are with them, to make sure that we get the actual footage that we need from them. So it is kind of what it is. So that's why every single pet that we have on our roster has to go through an audition process. Everybody asks, how does a pet audition? From the moment they step into our door, we're already auditioning you. The moment you bring your dog into our door, we're auditioning how they adjust in the environment that they are, how they respond to our stuff, how they are able to kind of, adapt to if there's other pets, if there's children in the room. And then we kind of check out their training. We check out their temperament. Are they barky? Do they like to bark? Do they bark at everything that moves? Or are they okay to just sit and stay where they are? Do they like to explore? So we can kind of figure out what kind of pet this is, and what they will fit in. So from the moment your pet walks through our door at Per and Bark, we're already auditioning them. Before we even talk to you as the pet parents, and before we even have a chat with about their temperament and everything, we're taking notice of everything that they do. So it is one of those things. So we're just we're sussing out our talents and things like that. That's really cool.
So I'm hearing a lot about temperament, less so about these pets being highly trained, although I think that's probably important too. What about the temperament of the owners? I feel like there's a stereotype of people with highly trained pets, maybe sort of like dog show kind of pet owners, where they are divas about their pets. Do you have to manage your relationship with the owners sometimes more than the pet itself?
I think absolutely, 100%. People are always much more, different and complicated than pets. Pets is one of two things. They're either hungry, tired, or they're really excited. And that's kind of what it is. But yes, we do have to manage our pet owners as well. And most of them, let me tell you now, I'll be honest, almost all of our pet owners are really amazing. They understand this business. They manage expectations, manage you are the owner, you're the handler. You kind of have to figure out with your pet and things like that. We're your agents. We're in the middle between you and the costings. And our job is to make sure your pet is at the right place at the right time. And most of our talents are really, really good with that. Of course, there are, characters that we have that come into the office. And hey, this is the business that we're in. We understand that, there are some people who think their dogs are the bee's knees, and they could never do no wrong. And that is okay as well. We just try to make sure that every single person is on the right page and every single person understands what their positions are in this relationship between agents and manager, because a pet owner works as their pet's manager. So we try to make sure they understand their role and our role, and we try to keep it in those spaces,
So for me, I know I don't have the temperament, and I know my cat doesn't have the temperament, but if somebody is listening right now and they think their pet, their dog, I don't know, their tarantula has the temperament, where can they find out more?
Well, first, no tarantulas, at least not yet. At least not yet, no birds. We're only taking cats and dogs for now. But if they wanted to find out more, they can go to info@perandbarktalent.com, and you can send us an application or a request there as well.
Ernestine, thanks for talking to me today. Thanks for going over the pet talent business with me.
Isn't it fun? It's a really good time. Thank you so much for having me, David. It was such a pleasure to have a chat with you.
Ernestine Perkins is a communications manager for both TN Model and Talent, and of course, Per and Bark Talent. You can find them at perandbarktalent.com. That's the show. Thanks for listening to it. I'll be back tomorrow with more of This Is Going Well, I think I'll be back tomorrow with the show. Actually, I know. See you then. Well, you'll hear me then. I won't see you.